You know, when I was a kid growing up in the '90s, my all-time favorite show, and it's still my favorite show to this day, was a little gem called Dragon Ball Z. Now, I have been a fan of Dragon Ball since I first saw an episode of Dragon Ball Z, and then what I did was I continued watching the rest of it and catching reruns to watch the entirety of the show. And I'm also a really big fan of Dragon Ball, which came before Dragon Ball Z. Now, the last episode of Dragon Ball Z, not counting any of the movies, because they're not really canon, is Goku training with Oob, who is the reincarnated version of Majin Buu. And what happens is the two fly off together after the World Tournament, and they go to train. And while that ending does seem a little bit unsatisfying, it's not necessarily bad. But me being a kid, I always wanted more. I wanted to see what the next step in the story was. Because I've seen Goku from child all the way to adult. I've seen him come over all these trials and tribulations. I've seen him make friends and make enemies. There's got to be more to his ending than that, just flying off into the distance. However, sometimes you really got to be careful what you wish for. Because after Dragon Ball Z, Funimation hopped on the hype train, and what was released was this: Dragon Ball GT. Now, a lot of people, myself included, have had many gripes about Dragon Ball GT, about how it ruined many things of the series and how it shouldn't have existed. But I'd like to argue, hear me out, that maybe, just maybe, GT was not quite as bad as we remember it, and it did have some pretty good moments. Now, I'm not saying that the show as a whole is good. There's a lot of flaws that I will talk about throughout this episode, but there were some things that I like looking back and reviewing GT now that I think were actually pretty decent. So let's start off at the beginning. So the beginning of the series, Goku was training on Kami's lookout, and Emperor Pilaf and his crew, who's all like old and crusty, they go to take the Dragon Balls. So when they get to the lookout, instead of finding the normal Red Star Dragon Balls, they find these Black Star Dragon Balls, but they don't know the difference. So they summon Shenron, and he's red, and it's like, oh, that's actually kind of cool, and they make a wish. So the wish that Pilaf makes by accident is that Goku is a little kid again, so he could beat him up, because he's in the heat of the moment. And Goku reverts back to his child state, but not quite like as chubby as he was in Dragon Ball. He's actually like super ripped, because he's a trained fighter for all these years. And so the first complaint that I would have is, why have we never seen this set of Black Star Dragon Balls? Now we get that they're like hidden on the lookout, right? And the reason why they're hidden is that, unlike the normal Dragon Balls, the Black Star ones go out over the universe. And if the Black Star Dragon Balls are not collected within a year's time, the Earth is going to blow up. And that seems kind of stupid. Like, what is going to make the Earth blow up? If the Dragon Balls were like, oh, they go across the universe and they were just going to go on an adventure to find them, I think that would have been a little bit more acceptable. But the whole like, oh, we got to save the Earth because it's going to blow up, was kind of stupid. So then we get to the next part. So, in order to save the world from blowing up, because, we don't have other Dragon Balls that can just unwish it or bring everyone back after it blows up, Goku sets out with Trunks, who is now an adult, and his granddaughter, Pan. And this is another point of GT that is really one of its weakest. It focuses on a bunch of characters that we really don't have any interest in. Now, I love Future Trunks from Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super. Future Trunks is one of the most badass characters. He arrives on Earth, he kills Frieza like it's nothing, and everyone's like, holy shit, this guy's awesome. He's a Super Saiyan, he's got that sword, like, he looks really cool, and he's awesome. And he's got this noble cause of going back in time to stop the androids from attacking and all that. And it's really hard to not like Future Trunks. But the same, in my opinion, cannot be said about Kid Trunks. I never liked Kid Trunks. He's kind of a jerk, and I get it, like, he's very different from Future Trunks, because they both grew up in different circumstances. But the coolness of Future Trunks didn't really translate to Kid Trunks very well. He was really obnoxious during a lot of Dragon Ball Z, and I really didn't care when he was on screen. So, in GT, naturally, because he's an adult, you would think that he would be like Future Trunks, and he kind of is. But you still feel like it's not the same, because as a watcher of Dragon Ball Z, I know that Future Trunks is still different than this adult version of Trunks from Dragon Ball GT that I'm seeing now. It's not the same. And they try to make Trunks to be as cool as he was from the Dragon Ball Z saga, and it really does fall short. So the other characters that were introduced to is Pan. Now Pan is the first female Saiyan that we've ever seen, except for the Bardock episode. But it was interesting to see a character like her. She gets kind of whiny and annoying, and it is a real shame that we don't ever see her become a Super Saiyan. So after the baby arc, she just kind of takes a backseat to let Goku do everything. I mean, Pan's okay. I like Pan, but they definitely could have fleshed her out more and made her a bit less whiny during the series. And of course, the other character that we focus on is Goku. Goku's the main character of the entire Dragon Ball saga. And I see what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it so that Dragon Ball GT would be a mix of what made Dragon Ball good and what made Dragon Ball Z good. Dragon Ball having the expansive adventure to find the Dragon Balls, and the Dragon Ball Z having the fight scenes. But because they tried to mesh these two together and it didn't have complete control by Akira Toriyama, it really shows that it fell short. Kid Goku is not as good as adult Goku. He just isn't. And Kid Goku can go Super Saiyan 3, but he can't hold it for long, which is okay, well, he did it before, he's just smaller. And then they bring his tail out to give him more power. It gets very, very confusing. However, I will say this. Now, this does not make any sense with anything of Dragon Ball GT, but it is one of the cool points that I think was really good. I like Super Saiyan 4. I like Super Saiyan 4. It's adult Goku with this red fur on his body. He's got red eyes and black hair. It looks awesome. Plus we had the 10 times Kamehameha that was red when it came out. That was really, really cool. The only thing about it is Goku doesn't remain an adult. He becomes Super Saiyan 4, but it makes his body grow. It didn't really make sense to me. It's like in Power Rangers Turbo, how that kid is the Blue Ranger, but then he doubles in size, and it's that's not how biology works. But I will say that Super Saiyan 4, in my opinion, is a welcome addition to the Dragon Ball series. But it is held back by the rest of GT. So those are the characters that the series focuses on. And of course it has its series of villains, which I'll get into in a moment. So let's talk about the rest of the series. Now, because the series has no manga adaptation, and it wasn't really too supervised that much by Akira Toriyama, it feels like filler. And not the good kind of filler. Now, you could watch Dragon Ball GT all the way through, and there are some good episodes with some good fights, but the majority, especially early on when they're fighting the Dragon Balls over the universe, it drags on, and there's a lot of filler. Now, personally, with filler, Dragon Ball Z was also full of a lot of filler. Hell, they have countless movies that are basically filler. But some of the filler was actually done very well. One example being the episode where Goku and Piccolo have to learn how to drive because Chi-Chi makes them. That was genuinely funny. And I thought it was freaking hysterical. So that was actually a pretty decent filler episode. Another one would be when Gohan is abandoned in the woods when he was very young by Piccolo to find his way and survive. He meets this group of rebel children and he becomes their friend, and they end up getting arrested, and the main guy sacrifices himself to save Gohan, and it was a genuinely charming and sweet episode, I thought. And there's a lot of moments in Dragon Ball Z where the filler doesn't feel like filler, just like a side story. Whereas GT, a lot of it feels like they're just padding it out to get to the next fight. Especially when they're traveling the universe for the Dragon Balls. It really drags on. And I gotta be honest, I can't think of any filler episode that I would consider good from Dragon Ball GT. Just nothing's that memorable. All the villains seem like copies from Dragon Ball Z, and the fights for those villains aren't really that good. Talking about villains, I think there are some other good points of Dragon Ball GT. Now, one good point that a lot of people, I think, gloss over is the villains. I think GT has some genuinely terrifying and well-designed villains. Now, the first main villain that we see is Baby. He's kind of like a weird, like, Cell Majin Buu kind of clone, where he, like, goes inside people and takes over their bodies. Kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or like They Live. And it was interesting to see. It was cool to see how, like, he could infect people. And then, once he infected them, he could leave their body, but they would be, like, subservient to him. So after Trunks, Goku, and Pan finish collecting the Dragon Balls, they come back to Earth, and they find that everyone's been taken over by Baby. And one note is that Baby takes over Vegeta. And he has this really cool form with, like, these blades on his back and this long white hair. And it looks really cool. Like, seeing Vegeta being taken over by Baby was a pretty crazy scene. And the fight between him and Goku, I don't think is terrible. Especially because it's the first, like, main fight that we see from Dragon Ball GT. I think it was done considerably well. Plus, we do get to see it bring in Super Saiyan 4 Goku, who will become a staple for the rest of the series. So Baby was the first main villain that we see. The next one is one that I think doesn't get enough credit for his design and his abilities. Super 17. I like Super 17 too. Super 17 is like a weird mix of like Android 17 and then Android 19 or 20 from Dragon Ball Z. Because like Dr. Gero and the doctor who made Baby meet up in hell. I know, it gets kind of crazy, and they make Super 17. So they make Super 17, and it's pretty cool. He's got like these like balls on his hand like the other androids, so he can absorb energy through his hands, and then like he has like crazy attacks and stuff. And I like his really ripped like long hair design. I thought that was pretty good. Yes, the fight is a little bit underwhelming if you compare it to the fight with Baby or the fight with the dragons in the next arc, but he's a lot cooler than some of the minor villains of Dragon Ball Z. And I think it's appropriate to say that, yeah, it was cool to see more of 17 after he was so abruptly taken out of in Dragon Ball Z. Hell, they even brought 17 back for Super. So there has to be some kind of influence from Super 17. Now, the final arc of Dragon Ball GT is the Dragon arc. This idea, I think, was very, 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 very good. It was, the people of Earth have used the Red Star Dragon Balls so much that they've become like corrupted from overuse. And what happens is they make a wish, and then these dragons, one representing each of the 7 Dragon Balls, breaks out. And they just wreak havoc upon the planet. And I thought that was a really, really cool idea. Yeah, they do use the Dragon Balls a lot. They use it to bring back people so death has no consequence. They use it for this, that, and the third. Hell, some people use it to get a pair of underwear, just like Oolong did in the original Dragon Ball. So it's easy to see that, yeah, it makes sense that the Dragon Balls would get corrupted from overuse. However, though this is a good idea, it was not necessarily executed in the best way. And what I mean by that is, the dragons kind of suck. Not all the dragons. Not all the dragons are bad. The ones that are the most memorable would be the ones that you see in any Dragon Ball game. There's Ice Shenron, who is an ice dragon. There's Nova Shenron, representing the 4-star ball, that is like a magma fire dragon. And then there is Omega Shenron, your standard big bad guy. But it was pretty cool to see him fight Super Saiyan 4 Goku. And at the end of the Dragon arc, we get to see Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, who uses some kind of BS magic device that Bulma made. He's like, oh, I'm Super Saiyan 4, whatever. But Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta might be the single most greatest thing that I've ever seen in Dragon Ball GT. So, in canon, for GT, Goku and Vegeta do the fusion dance to make Gogeta, which we've only ever seen in video games and Fusion Reborn. So we haven't seen him in the Dragon Ball Z series, so he's kind of like that mythical character. But then he becomes real in Dragon Ball GT because it's a show, and we're watching it, and we're seeing it on the screen. And Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, though is very short-lived to his immense strength, is awesome. There's a scene where he goes, Kamehameha, confetti, and he shoots little confetti at Omega Shenron, and Shenron's like, blub, and he goes to hit Gogeta, and Gogeta just wrecks him. And of course, right before that, Goku and Vegeta kill him, they break apart, and it's really disappointing, and then, Goku beats him in the end, like always. But it was a cool arc to see. Another good thing to note about Omega Shenron is what he does is he absorbs the other dragons to make like a big dragon. So like each of the balls on his chest, and it's a pretty good concept because he gets stronger with each Dragon Ball that he absorbs. So that's the show. Now there is one more, a little bit of a Dragon Ball GT that is very controversial, and I gotta be honest, I don't like it either. There is a Dragon Ball GT movie. I have it. I've seen it. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. So the Dragon Ball GT movie, it's not pretty. It's better than the live-action ones, better than Dragon Ball Evolution, but that's not really saying much. The plot it's about Goku's great-great-great-great-grandson and how he's finding his way in the world and fighting and all that stuff. And the only character that's alive from the original Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z series is Pan. And she's old. And just that concept alone just really turned me off, because it's like, you're going to kill every single character that made the show good after you've ignored them for the entirety of your freaking series. You're going to say that, oh yeah, they're all dead. They're all dead. Screw it. Everyone's dead. Piccolo's dead. Goku's dead. Vegeta's dead. Now they're all dead. Except Pan. She could stay around. And of course Goku and Vegeta's great-great-great-great-great-grandson. It's terrible. Don't even waste your time watching that movie. It's a dumb concept. The animation is very lackluster. And the fight scenes are even worse than the ones in Dragon Ball GT. If you really want to watch Dragon Ball GT, watch at your own risk. There's a lot to criticize it for. But there are a lot of good ideas that would have been better if maybe Akira Toriyama had a little bit more of a hands-on approach to GT rather than just letting the studios do whatever they want. Is it bad? Yeah, it is. But it's not a steaming pile of bad. It's bad with a little bit of good in it. And, as a final note for its defense, it did do the one thing that we wanted. We wanted more Dragon Ball. And Super is obviously superior to Dragon Ball GT. Super is awesome. If you want to watch a really great continuation, Dragon Ball Super is the way to go. But back then, GT was all we had. It was either end Dragon Ball Z with that unsatisfying ending, or it was watch Dragon Ball GT. And as a kid, yeah, there's plenty of enjoyment to get of it. But after seeing through the smoke and mirrors and through the Kamehamehas and the fight scenes, I see a lot of flaws that I didn't see before. Alright everyone, this has been another episode of Kirk Talk. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know I kind of talked a lot about this. Was a longer episode, but there's a lot to say because Dragon Ball is a series that I'm very, very passionate about. And I thought it would be good to talk about Dragon Ball GT and talk about some of the good things about it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.